Hi, everybody. Today is Thursday, July 16, 2026, and our dear friend, our brother, Pepe Escobar, is here with us from France. Everybody was asking, where is Pepe? Where is Pepe?
Well, Nimas, the smiles, you provoke my smiles, even in the middle of the deepest darkness. Great to be with you again. Great to be with all of you, especially because I could not think of a more dangerous crossroads. Today we're talking, today, Thursday. Tomorrow we could be in total hell or in the next few days. So this is one of those days in history. Very, very dangerous. And I was discussing with Nima before we started, and obviously many of you who will watch our show in a few hours, today at 5 p.m. Eastern in the US, after the closing of Wall Street, the baboon of Barbaria is going to launch a special executive order. And this could be anything. This could be the restart of, let's go back to our German friends, Totalen Krieg, total war. And everything that was on his table and still is today before the final decision, which is his, of course, includes horrible stuff, everything from an invasion of Karg Island to indiscriminate bombing of all along the Persian Gulf, to bombing of civilian infrastructure, which is something that they have already started. For instance, a missile landed near a hospital in Iran, so they are back to bombing civilian infrastructure, and power installations across Iran and electricity installations across Iran. If that happens, Nima knows better than anybody, all bets are off. And Tehran already said, then there are no limits, and beware of our response. And everybody will be caught. Not only those bases that have already seen what Iran is capable of, especially in Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar as well, and even that port in Oman, Duqm. Why the Iranians bomb Duqm? Duqm. Very, very important. First of all, because it's outside of the Strait of Hormuz. And guess who refuels at Duqm all the time? The US aircraft carriers and their support groups. Far, far away. They go to Duqm, they refuel, and then they go back to the Sea of Oman or the Arabian Sea. So Duqm is an essential node of CENTCOM and of the American ships that patrol the Northern Indian Ocean, obviously. So this is going to get much, much, much worse. And of course, like we were discussing with Nima a few minutes ago, our friends from Yemen are ready to enter the chat at any minute. Once again, all bets will be off, and it's going to be highway to hell, guaranteed.
Let me, Pepe, start with your latest piece that it will be published in few hours in
I hope so, in the
Russia.
next few hours, yes.
Yeah, and it says that how Tehran is running the clock. And what is the main objective? I'm just reading it, and it has various sections. You're starting with the Iranian parliament and
Yes.
describing what is going on there. Go ahead, give us your understanding of the situation with this new piece.
Well, the new piece it's a complex piece. It was very long. I started with over 3,000 words and brought it back to less than 1,500 because it connects different layers, and it doesn't get as far as the situation right now, where everything could be about to explode in the next few hours. But it lays out on one side how consistent the Iranian position has been for months, in fact, and especially after the MOU was signed by both sides, by Trump in Versailles and by the Iranians. Essentially, the 14-point MOU, which basically was what the Pakistani mediators essentially did was to try to convince the Americans that they simply could not change those 14 points. The 14 points were essentially elaborated by Tehran. And it was more or less on a take it or leave it for the Americans. You want an off-ramp, a way out, you want some sort of peace, like you're saying, that's it. You have to fulfill all these commitments. The craziest thing is that the President of the United States actually signed it. So we assume that he actually read the 14 points. That's not clear. He probably did not read anything because he still doesn't understand. Simple matters like, for instance, the new statute for navigation in the Strait of Hormuz will be controlled and set up by Iran. And in Trump's mind is between Iran and Oman. And obviously in the according to the headlines in Western mainstream media, American mainstream media. So nobody actually read the 14 points and the actual text of the memorandum of understanding. It was blown up by Trump last week. And now it's even worse because now it's not even about renegotiating the MOU, which Iran from the beginning already said we're not renegotiating anything. It was signed by both sides. You have to fulfill your side of the commitments and we fulfill ours. Once again, for the Americans, this is untenable. They don't understand the concept of mutual diplomacy and mutual commitments. If you commit and sign on one side, the other side has to do exactly the same thing. So now, not only Trump literally blew up the whole thing, but he's threatening once again to bomb Iran all over again. And with a series of potential high crimes, high crimes and war crimes, along which bombing of civilian infrastructure and, of course, bombing civilians all over again. Not only those targets along the Persian Gulf, and that includes everything, which is the stuff that was on his table, still is today, like the invasion of Karg Island. Even assuming that they would be able to invade Karg Island, Nima knows this very, very well. To maintain US troops on Karg Island in Iranian territory is virtually impossible. They will be decimated. And everybody knows that. But the level of desperation on Trump's side, and this is also in the, I discuss in certain detail in the column, that he never wanted to negotiate with Iran. He wanted a capitulation, he wanted surrender, and he wanted to sell this surrender and capitulation internally and profit from it. Instead, he got an MOU. He got a diplomatic instrument that he had to sign to give the impression that he was negotiating when he never wanted to negotiate anything. So that explains to a great deal his total desperation as we speak. Of course, all these rumors and in some cases factual appraisals of his mental abilities at the moment keep circulating. Some of them coming from people who actually worked with him. Yes, he's becoming senile by the minute, more and more. And that affects everything. And that affects, in fact, first of all, his memory. He doesn't remember what he said 5 seconds ago or what he posted on Truth Social. So this is how dangerous the situation is. Everybody is hostage to his volatility and boundless stupidity, not to mention the bruised ego. Like, for instance, some people who worked with him, and this has been circulating in Washington already, he was absolutely furious when he saw those crowds in Iran, Nima. Because the information that was fed to him is that this was a very unpopular government who, basically tortures the Iranian population. And then he sees 40 million people all across Iran praising, the burial of ceremonial rites of Ayatollah Khamenei. On top of it, if this was not complex enough, in Iran, we have the start of the Mostafa Khamenei era, which, once again, I need to re-stress to all of you. It started last Friday. We are in the very first days of the Mostafa Khamenei, supreme leader of Islamic Republic of Iran, and the ultimate decider. So now everything comes from him. And considering what was already, for instance, there was an MP from the Majlis, the Iranian parliament, who went on Iranian state TV reading some of the internal communications between Mostafa and people close to him. So we already know what he thinks. And what is the most important thing, Nima, and all of you? That he never believed in any possible negotiation with the Americans, just like his father. Ayatollah Khamenei, as a revolutionary, as a political leader, as a religious leader, as the supreme leader for so many years, he already knew by experience that it's impossible to negotiate with the Americans. He was proving.
To be honest, Pepe, to be honest, none of the Iranian leadership, none, from the first Iranian supreme leader, then the second, which was the Sayyid Ali Khamenei, and the new one, none of them believe in negotiation talks with the United States. I have never heard any positive point in considering negotiations or making some sort of political agreement with the United States. It has never been the case.
You're absolutely right, and that, of course, that's when we come to Mostafa's new decisions. For instance, we already know that he never was in favor of negotiations leading to an MOU because he never believed that this would be possible. But first step, he deferred to the Supreme National Security Council. He told them, look, if you reach a solid majority, and that's what happened. The solid majority said, okay, let's give it a chance, see what happens. Then I will support you. Now he sees that the Americans blew it up. So he was right from the start that this will never. So that brings us to, if we have a desperate president of the United States reigniting the war and attacking Iranian, not only so-called military targets, but civilian infrastructure, Iran has already said via numerous official sources that the response will involve the whole Persian Gulf. So everybody will be part of it, which, by the way, the response so far has already involved a great deal. Not only Persian Gulf, but outside those command and control centers in Jordan, but especially Kuwait and Bahrain and Qatar and Oman, the Duqm port. So now you can multiply that for by 1 million, and this will be the Iranian response. So the escalation ladder, we are once again right in the middle of, and this seems to be much more dangerous than the previous one, or the current escalation ladder. If Trump is desperate enough to launch a renewed attack, once again, all bets are off in terms of Iran will go all out in its response. Okay, allow me just something that a lot of people informed, misinformed, or trying to be informed are commenting. Why don't you sink a US aircraft carrier? That would be perfect. But obviously, the Iranians know that if they do that, then the fury from the empire will be to the level of launching multiple nuclear bombs against Iran. So this is the ultimate humiliation. So they are keeping this card for later on. The other card, which is immensely intriguing, is the Bab al-Mandeb. I just posted again on my X account the Al-Aqsa Triangle, the red triangle that unites Hormuz, Al-Aqsa, and the Suez Canal. There you go. The Al-Aqsa Triangle will be with the blocking of Hormuz and the Bab al-Mandeb, and of course the blocking of the Red Sea, meaning essentially, among other things, that no oil will be exported from the Persian Gulf, period. And not to mention all the oil from Saudi Arabia via the east-west pipeline towards the port of Yanbu in the Red Sea, blocked completely. For Ansarullah to do this is very, very easy. Of course, if we look at the usual suspects like the pathetic Reuters, which, as somebody that comes from the newspaper business, I know exactly how the business works, and we know the role of these Western news agencies. How do they work? How do they fabricate news? How do they source stuff that is non-sourced or unsourced and all that? They are saying that the Houthis, which these idiots, they cannot even name properly. It's Ansarullah, the movement, and it's the Yemeni armed forces. The Houthis is a family from northern Yemen, which is among the founders of Ansarullah. So they cannot even do proper journalism, in fact. They are just waiting for an order from Tehran to block the Bab el-Mandeb. That's not how it works. And everybody who has been to Yemen, which was my case last year, we sat down to members of the Ansarullah Political Council. I talked to at least 5 or 6 with them face to face, and they explained to us how decisions are made and how collegiate decisions with Iran are made as well. Common decisions with the Tehran leadership, with IRGC, etc. So obviously, you cannot picture a bunch of Houthis in Sana'a waiting for a phone call from Tehran saying, now close the Bab el-Mandeb. That's not how it works, only for idiots. So this is a very, very serious business. They already analyzed what it takes to close the Bab el-Mandeb, and they have everything that takes, but especially when to do it. And this has been discussed between Sana'a and Tehran in detail. Okay, this is one of our nuclear cards. The number one nuclear card is the Strait of Hormuz. That's settled. It will always be Iranian. The number 2 nuclear card is the Bab el-Mandeb, which Ansarullah and the Yemeni armed forces and Navy can block anytime they want. So when to use this card? This might enter the chat depending on the extent of the American attack. And this has already been expressed by members of the Ansarullah Political Council. And they were putting this hypothetically. What would happen to oil prices if blah, 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 blah. And of course, everybody knows the answer. Oil will shoot up to 150 and maybe in a few days to 200. And that's it. Collapse of the global economy, period. Collapse of any energy coming out from the Persian Gulf going to clients around the world, period. And the craziest thing, Nima, which you know, we know, our audience knows, the level of desperation of the President of the United States is leading him to do something that will undermine his political position, the economy of the United States, and much worse, the global economy. But once again, and that's, I have tried to find some parallels with a Shakespearean tragedy to explain the story. We can't, because the main character, the central character, is total trash. He's not worthy of a Shakespearean talent to weave a narrative around him. It's a lowly grifter, a narcissistic megalomanian psycho and sociopath. So you cannot have a Shakespearean or a Greek tragedy element around it. It's just a really, really junk, trashy story. The problem is that he's dragging his own country and a great deal of the world towards this swamp of narcissism that he lives in. So that's the really tragic aspect of what we're living. But and to close, among the themes that I touch on the column, how Iran knows how to drag the clock, manage the clock, and work the clock is because they know that time is on their side. And they identified from the beginning that the number one reason for this war, they got an advantage almost right away, which is the Strait of Hormuz. This war was never about the Iranian nuclear dossier. This is the smokescreen. The real story is this is an oil war in a petrodollar war. And the logic, the imperial logic was, we go there, we defeat them, we provoke regime change, we take over their country, and especially we take over one of the key oil choke points of the planet, and we impose that everything is going, all the business is going to be conducted in the petrodollar. No yuan, no other currencies, no cash, nothing, only petrodollar. So this floundered from the beginning, and that adds to the imperial desperation. How to revert that? You can't. You can bomb Iran to the Stone Ages, and still Iran will control the Strait of Hormuz. How do you escape the predicament that you created for yourself? You can't. So all that is explains to a large extent why we are now, today, Nima, this day, a few hours before this executive order, in such dangerous territory. Please go ahead, Nima.